On December 11, 2025, after more than 3 decades on Tennessee's death row, Harold Wayne Nichols was put to death by lethal injection. In this video, we examine the crime, the investigation, his final meal, and his final words. It was late on September 30th, 1988, when 28-year-old Wayne parked near a quiet home in Chattanooga's Brainerd neighborhood, unaware that lives would be changed forever that night. Inside the quiet house lived 3 young women, including 21-year-old Karen Pulley. Wayne knew exactly who lived there. He had watched the house before, memorizing the rhythms of the street, the way lights turned off, the sounds that faded as night settled in. From his car, parked just far enough away to blend into the darkness, he waited. His eyes stayed fixed on the front of the home until he saw one of the roommates get dressed and leave. That was the moment he had been waiting for. He stepped out of the vehicle carrying a short piece of lumber, a 2x4 taken from nearby. The street was silent as he moved toward the house. He found a small bathroom window and forced his way inside, landing softly on the floor. Once inside, he moved through the hallway slowly, listening for any sound that might give him away. Upstairs, Karen was asleep. She had no idea someone was inside the home, no warning that danger was only seconds away. Wayne entered her bedroom and attacked without warning. Karen woke in terror and tried to fight back, but she was no match for the sudden violence. The blows were devastating. When he finally left the room, Karen was lying on the floor, gravely injured. Wayne took items from the house and disappeared into the night, leaving her behind. The next morning, one of Karen's roommates returned home and immediately sensed something was wrong. Inside the bedroom, she found Karen barely alive, surrounded by blood. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Karen never regained consciousness. She died the following day. As investigators began processing the crime scene, Wayne was already moving on. Just weeks later, shortly after midnight on October 20th, 1988, he struck again. This time it was in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of Chattanooga. Inside the home, a 23-year-old woman was finishing her bedtime routine. Her husband worked late shifts, and she had unlocked the side door so he could come in when he returned. Only minutes later, Wayne found that door. He entered silently, moving with confidence. He picked up a heavy object from inside the house and approached the bedroom. The attack was sudden and overwhelming. The woman was injured and threatened into silence. She survived, but the trauma would stay with her forever. When it was over, Wayne told her not to move. She stayed exactly where she was, terrified to breathe, until her husband came home and found her shaking in the darkness. Police were called immediately. Officers began collecting evidence, unaware that the man responsible would soon reach out again. While police were still at the house, the phone rang. The victim recognized the voice instantly. Before she could speak, she handed the phone to an officer. The line went dead. That call was only the beginning. Between the fall of 1988 and early 1989, Wayne carried out a series of home invasions across Chattanooga. At least 11 women were attacked. Some had been watched for days, others for weeks. He entered their homes armed with whatever he could find, threatening and controlling every moment. He always disappeared before police arrived. Each attack followed the same pattern. For months, detectives chased leads that went nowhere. They interviewed more than 100 people, processed evidence, and searched for connections, but they had no suspect. Everything changed on a Thursday night in January 1989. At 8:10 p.m., East Ridge Police Captain Larry Holland received an anonymous tip. The caller gave a name and date of birth. That information led directly to Wayne. Detectives ran his record and found a prior conviction for burglary and attempted violent crime. The pattern was undeniable. They showed his photograph to several victims. One by one, each woman identified the same man. That night, a warrant was signed. By 11:06 p.m., police surrounded Wayne's home. He was arrested without resistance and taken into custody. At the station, he waived his rights and began talking. Confessions followed quickly. On video, Wayne admitted to multiple attacks. As questioning continued through the night, he revealed even more victims, some of whom had never reported what happened. By morning, investigators realized the full scope of the violence. Later that day, additional victims identified him in lineups. When questioned again, Wayne spoke about Karen. He described how he entered her room and attacked her. He led police to the location where he had discarded the weapon. Days later, his wife came forward and told investigators that Wayne had confessed to her as well. On February 1st, 1989, the state charged him with Karen Pulley's murder. More charges followed, covering nearly every attack. Psychological evaluations later confirmed that Wayne was competent and understood his actions. The trial for Karen's murder began on May 7, 1990. Because of media attention, jurors were brought in from another county. Wayne's attorneys attempted to block his taped confession from being shown, but the motion was denied. After that ruling, Wayne chose not to fight the charges. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and related offenses. The trial moved directly to sentencing. Prosecutors sought the death penalty, citing the brutality of the crime and Wayne's history of violent felonies. Jurors heard testimony from police, paramedics, and Karen's roommates, each describing the aftermath of the attack. A paramedic testified that the injuries were unlike anything he had seen before. The medical examiner detailed the extent of the trauma and confirmed the weapon used. The jury also heard Wayne's recorded confession and saw a recreation of his movements through the house. Each piece of evidence reinforced the same conclusion. Karen's death was deliberate and violent. When the prosecution rested, the defense began presenting its case. The defense asked the jury to see Wayne as more than the crimes he committed. His wife testified, describing him as gentle and quiet. She spoke about his long work hours and said she never believed he was capable of such violence. Friends and pastors followed, offering similar descriptions and suggesting that something dark had overtaken him. When Wayne took the stand, he spoke about his childhood. He described losing his mother at a young age and being sent to an orphanage without explanation. He talked about instability, abandonment, and a strained relationship with his father. As a young man, he joined the army, hoping structure would give him direction. For a time, it did. He was honorably discharged and later married. He worked steadily and supported his family. On the surface, his life appeared stable. But he told the jury that inside, something was breaking. He described moments when his thoughts went blank and violence took over. He said he did not understand it and did not seek help. A psychologist testified that Wayne suffered from intermittent explosive disorder, describing years of suppressed anger that erupted into violence. He explained how early loss and instability could shape such behavior. But the prosecution argued that none of it excused what Wayne had done. On May 12, 1990, the jury returned its verdict. After 2 hours of deliberation, they sentenced Harold Wayne Nichols to death. The verdict cited the calculated nature of the murder, its brutality, his lack of remorse, and disregard for human life. Wayne also received lengthy prison sentences for additional convictions involving other victims. Even without the death sentence, he would have spent the rest of his life behind bars. For more than 3 decades, Wayne appealed his sentence. His lawyers argued that his childhood trauma and mental health issues should spare his life. Every court reviewed the case and reached the same conclusion. The evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, an execution date was set for December 11, 2025. Under Tennessee law, Wayne could choose the method of execution, but he refused to make a choice. By default, the state selected lethal injection. Years earlier, his execution had been delayed due to the pandemic. As time passed, Wayne's life on death row took a different shape. According to his clemency petition, he became a stabilizing presence inside the prison. Officers described him as calm and respectful. He mentored younger inmates and worked to prevent conflicts. He also participated in programs aimed at steering troubled teens away from crime. Supporters argued that he had changed and no longer posed a threat. They said his transformation began the moment he was sentenced. A key part of the petition focused on Karen Pulley's mother, and, after the verdict, she asked to speak with Wayne. Instead of anger, she spoke about faith and forgiveness. She met with him again before he was transferred and gave him a Bible. That Bible stayed with him for decades. Former officers and volunteers later submitted statements describing Wayne as one of the kindest inmates they had supervised. They called him a leader who encouraged others to do better. Despite those accounts, the state remained firm. Days before the execution, Governor Bill Lee announced that he would not grant clemency. The sentence would stand. For Karen's family, the decades had been filled with pain. Her sister said the years since the murder felt like a lifetime of suffering. She hoped the execution would allow her to remember her sister for who she was, not how she died. A surviving victim expressed similar feelings, saying justice had taken too long. She spoke of the fear that lingered long after the attacks ended, and said the execution was overdue as the date approached. The case once again forced the public to confront difficult questions. Could a person truly change after committing unimaginable violence? Does transformation outweigh the harm done? And what does justice mean after nearly 4 decades? On December 11, 2025, the state of Tennessee carried out the sentence. For some, it marked closure. For others, it reopened wounds that never fully healed. This story is not just about one man's crimes or his death. It is about the lives he shattered, the system that judged him, and a community that lived in fear. And it leaves behind a question that has no easy answer. When time has passed and lives have changed, how should justice be measured? Like most inmates facing execution, Harold Wayne Nichols was allowed to choose a final meal before the sentence was carried out. Under Tennessee policy, prisoners are given a modest allowance, and Wayne made his decision without hesitation. He requested beef brisket, coleslaw, a baked potato, onion rings, deviled eggs, and warm cheese biscuits, finished with a glass of sweet fruit tea. Early on the morning of December 11, 2025, he was escorted from his cell and led toward the execution chamber. When asked if he wished to make a final statement, Wayne spoke softly and without anger. He apologized to those he had harmed, told his family that he loved them, and said he was ready to leave this world. At 10:25 a.m., the curtain to the witness room was opened. Wayne lay on the gurney wearing a yellow prison uniform, his black glasses resting on his face. His arms were extended at his sides, a sheet placed carefully over his body as the medical team prepared the 4 lines. In the witness room, his sister watched in silence, struggling to hold herself together. Beside Wayne, his spiritual advisor offered quiet prayers and began reading from the Bible, pausing as emotion caught in his voice as the minutes passed. Wayne's breathing slowed. He blinked heavily, his chest rising and falling more deeply as the drugs entered his system. His foot tapped once, then went still. Color drained from his face as his body relaxed completely. The room remained silent as the process continued. A short time later, the blinds were drawn. At 10:39 a.m., Harold Wayne Nichols was pronounced dead at the age of 64. For some, his execution marked long-delayed justice. For others, it raised difficult questions about punishment, forgiveness, and finality. What do you think? Did this sentence bring closure, or did it leave something unresolved? Share your thoughts in the comments below.